All right, it is just about that time of the year, dry January. More and more people seem to be doing these dry months, whether it's January, some people do dry July, sober October. And let's talk about it because I think it's cool that it's picking up. I mean, everywhere I see it, it does seem like more and more people are either sober curious or going, do I want to keep doing this alcohol thing? There's more and more alternatives out there for non-alcoholic drinks, which is wonderful to see. So let's talk about it. My name is Chris, by the way, here with Lauren and Matt, my team.
Hello,
Hey
hello.
guys,
Hey, hey.
Hey, everybody.
this is our podcast called Freedom from Alcohol. I'm just going to throw this out up front. If you find value in this or any of our previous episodes, we would love a like, a follow, subscribe, leave a review, tell us how amazing we are. No, I'm kidding. You don't have to do that unless
You
you really
could.
do
I mean,
find value. Yeah.
yes, of
Um,
course.
so, but we would love that. We would appreciate that because it helps
Yeah.
push it out to more people, and that's why we do this for people like yourself who are curious about what an alcohol-free life would look like because all three of us used to have a problem with alcohol, and now all three of us are on the other side of it. And I can't speak for you guys, but my life is immensely better without
Mm,
alcohol. Yes, you would say, of
yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah.
course.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
and and that's coming from somebody who never imagined that. That's coming from a person who couldn't see a life where I didn't drink any alcohol. The thought of that used to scare the hell out of me
Mhm.
because alcohol is everywhere. And so if you're listening thinking that, we get it. We understand that it can seem challenging. So let's talk about if you've thought about I'm going to start with a dry January. I'm going to take 31 days to not drink any alcohol because a lot of people beat themselves up with alcohol over the holidays. There's a lot of boozing going on. You,
Hmm.
you know, you're with family, you're at parties, and you come out the other side and you go, oh my God, I need a break. My body's begging for a break. So it really is a good time to look at your relationship with alcohol. And so if you're going to do it, we just wanted to talk about it today, give you some pointers, some advice, some things that maybe we've gone through. So, Lauren, I'll throw it to you. What
Yeah.
would you say to somebody thinking about doing a dry January?
Well, first I want to say that I love that alcohol is becoming this thing that there are so many curious people out there, so many sober curious people out there. I'm really loving that. It just makes me so happy because like Chris, we're raising children and I'm watching my boys growing up in a place where hopefully when they're 21 they don't mess with it the way I did, right? Like none of us knew how toxic it was. Nobody knew how it could just wreck your life over time. And we weren't told all of that. But I feel like our youth is growing up with that knowledge. For sure, my kids are because they're hearing me do all of this and they know I'm coaching clients and all of that. But
Yep.
even my older two boys, they don't drink either. They might have a beer occasionally, but they are really, I feel like the younger generations are taking a step back and getting really curious about why this is the norm and why we're doing this. So I'm really loving watching that happen in the younger generation. Um, and then the other thing I'll say is that I think dry January is beautiful because if you're anything like I was, probably, well, I know Chris, because you passed out under a Christmas tree one time.
Oh yeah, one of my proudest moments ever.
Whoop, whoop,
Nice.
good job, good job.
Yeah.
But we really do drink, any time that we can find a reason to have more alcohol than our norm, which was already too much anyway, right? Then
Hmm.
we're going to really booze it up and do it up. So when you're
Yeah.
looking at, those last couple days of December, gosh, you're not feeling good. And I remember like it was like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait till like these kids go back to school and maybe I could take a break from drinking. I never did, but I'm just saying. But it's a great time because you're so beat up and you're so sick and you're almost like reaching for that bottle and you're like, oh, I don't want to do this. And you do it anyway. So I feel like dry January comes at the perfect time because you're kind of just beat up and exhausted and tired and need that break. So I think it comes
Mm,
at a perfect time. And I'm going to kick it to Matt to talk about some tips and tricks.
for sure. Yeah, a couple things that come to mind for me is just be open going in and be open to a few different things, but specifically the one that I want to go into is like be open that you don't have to be there's this countdown clock to the 31 days, and then it's just like the set to celebrate the fact that you've been 31 days alcohol free, you celebrate by
Right.
drinking. So just being open to the idea that perhaps there's a reason why you're feeling so good, and perhaps it's because alcohol is out of your life, right? So just be open to that idea. I ask that or recommend or offer that to you. The other thing I offer is to really jumpstart this or kickstart this, just to leverage what Lauren was talking about as far as feeling pretty burnt out, you know, towards the end of the end of December there, hungover, presumably just full of turkey and whatever else. Really leverage that. And I offer to you to kickstart Dry January by having perhaps your first ever alcohol-free New Year's Eve, and view it as like your moon landing moment. You're like, okay, so if I can get through New Year's Eve without drinking, certainly I can go through the next 31 days, right? And just again, it's all about, it's like experimenting with this. It's like an experiment, and so it's about like being more aware and more conscious of otherwise sort of autopilot behaviors that you've been running for presumably a lot of your adult life. And yeah, just get really curious. I think the number one word for me, as far as it's like the openness, but number one is like curious. Be curious about why you were doing this in the first place. Be curious about what you're feeling. Be curious about your triggers. And you have the safe container of 31 days. This is a challenge that you've agreed to yourself and presumably some other people to do. And it's just like, man, just have some fun with it too. It's yeah, that would just be my thing, is like it helps you stay more consistently. If you're more curious about like what's on the other side of what you're feeling and going through, as opposed to um focusing on like what the one thing that you're not getting at this stage, that being alcohol.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing is, I would say you don't have to look at January 31st as the end. Like, it's okay to keep going. As a matter of fact, I would recommend doing for a 90-day challenge. If you're going to do dry January, that's awesome. And I love it. And if you do 31 days, that's tremendous. And I hope you pay attention to what your body's doing. But if you're feeling great, why not start out and just go, you know what, I'm gonna make this thing go longer. I'm gonna do at least 90 days, because 30-ish days is good, but honestly, you don't really start noticing the benefits of not drinking until after 30 days. You know, there are some things that you will definitely notice, but you know, in order to get like really noticing great sleep and some other things, it takes a little bit of time. And if you're enjoying the dry January, just keep going, right? And eh, pay attention to your body and everything during that time, and do some mindset work, change up your routine, change up everything, you know, as opposed to just doing the exact same things just without alcohol, to
Mhm.
see, like Matt was saying, getting curious about yourself and just keep going with it. You know, why go back? I remember I did a dry January a few years ago, and I kept going into February, and it was 2 weeks into February, and my sister was coming over to visit, and I didn't need to drink, but my brain told me, well, you've done really well. We're at this point. Let's buy some alcohol because you're going to have company over. And that was the dumbest thing, because I was flying high. I was feeling really good. I was proud of myself. And part of my brain really wanted to keep going without drinking, but the other part came in and was like, no, we got to drink because people are over. It's don't let yourself, don't listen to that part of yourself, you know, take
Yeah.
over. If you're feeling really good, keep going with it.
Mhm.
And understand why you're doing it, right? Like, what is the end goal here? What if you get 31 days and you feel really great? Nobody's saying you have to go back to it. If you get it to the end of 90 days and you feel really great, nobody says you have to go back to it. You can just decide, you know what, I really enjoy being a non-drinker. I'm going to keep going with this thing, and you will not regret it. I promise you that. So, the other thing I wanted to say about, you know, dry January and all these things, you know, you would think that the alcohol companies don't like it because more and more people are jumping on this fad, but it's the opposite. The alcohol companies really love it, because what happens is a lot of people say, all right, I'm doing this, and then they'll fall off, right? It'll be maybe a week in, 2 weeks in, even they get to the end of dry January, but they go back to it. And the alcohol companies know that a majority of people are going to do that, and they're laughing at you. They are sitting there with their smug smile on their face, going, I know, go ahead, you do your little dry January thing, but I know you'll be back. So just
Mhm.
use that for fuel. You know, that
Yeah.
always kind of helps
Yeah.
me picture that smug fat cat big wig at the
Yeah.
alcohol company laughing at you, and say, you know what, screw you. Because isn't it true, guys? Like, somebody tells you you can't do something, that is like, that's excellent fuel to do something.
It
Yeah.
is. Yeah. Yeah. That's like a motivator, right? Motivation has a bit of a shelf life, but man, that's that rocket fuel for sure. Like that's enough to absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's congratulations if you are deciding on doing dry January. But again, I just caution you to understand why you're doing it. Don't just do it because you want to or because other people are doing it. Do it because you want to figure out who the hell you are without alcohol and go and do that. Lauren, did you have something there?
Yeah, I was just gonna tag on when Matt was talking. I was thinking, ooh, how cool would it be if you actually kept a journal a little bit to talk about how
Mm,
you're feeling? Because it's one thing to do it and know you're feeling better, but how are you feeling better? Let's get some objective rather than subjective data and start writing down like how are you feeling different so that you can kind of prove it to yourself. Because let's say at the end of those 31 days you're thinking about drinking or you decide to continue on, you want to be able to have like a measuring stick on how to say like, well, I definitely don't feel that good now.
yeah,
And then
right.
let's say you go for 90 days and then something happens like what happened with Chris. His sister was coming over, and let's say you decide to drink. Pay attention to that too,
Mm,
and start noticing
great
that
idea.
the things that you thought were going on when you drank were not the same. And Chris, I can imagine you were sitting on the couch that day thinking, well, I shouldn't have probably done that because now I can see where it's heading. And that can further fuel your sober journey if you decide to go that route. Just making sure that we're aware, because so often, we can walk through this world and we don't even know what color the grass is or what color the sky is because we're not paying attention. We're so wrapped up in the day to day. So if we can really pay attention to like, hey, how is my sleep? How is my skin? How much weight have I lost? Because let me tell you
Mm,
something, you might lose a couple pounds and that's going to feel good. What's my stamina look like? What does my energy level look like? How's my sleep? How's my sex drive?
mhm.
How's my productivity at work? What are we
Yeah.
seeing that's going so well? And then you can go back and look and see if you decide to drink again, you're going to notice really quickly like, oh fuck, I don't feel very good. Everything's kind of going back down, and so just being aware.
Yeah,
Great idea to have,
absolutely.
yeah, have those like measurables, right, Lauren? I think that's a great idea, right? Like even if you just go out of 10, if you have three things that you want to measure through dry January, like you say, productivity, overall, like emotional, spiritual, whatever. And then the third thing, just overall joy or like mood or something like that. And just measure it all and then just kind of see how that changes. And if you're finding 4 out of 10 at the beginning of the month, and by the end, you're at like 8 out of 10 consistently. Well, man, that's going to speak volumes, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing
Yeah.
too I wanted to throw in, guys, was just the 2190 rule, because you mentioned the 90-day thing, Chris, right? So it's like 21 days to sort of create a new habit. It's like the wet cement idea. And then it's usually, I think it says somewhere around between like 66 and 90 is like when those new habits really take form. So keeping that in mind as well, if you're wanting to change a habit, aka stop drinking alcohol, it to your point, Chris, it is beyond that 31 days. You need to get it a little bit deeper water. So in between that like second and third month, you're like, to your point, you're really going to start noticing those changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But at the end of the day, even a 30-day break is good. Anytime you give your body a reset and you're not putting poison into it, you're doing amazing. And we know we've been there, we've done it, we've tried, stopped for a little bit and then came back to it. And every time it got more and more frustrating. It got harder and harder. And you know, when we feel frustrated, when we feel upset at ourselves and all this kind of stuff, that's when alcohol seems very appealing. So we don't want to be in that place, right? So, you know, just keep going. And, if you do decide, let's say you do drink like I did after 2 weeks into February, it's okay to decide, all right, I'm just hopping back on. I had a drink.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. It's okay. I'm not going to sit and feel bad about it and go back to alcohol. I'm not going to give them
Hmm.
that pleasure. I'm going to just say, I'm going to hop back on this thing and you can get right back at it. And there's no harm, no foul. It doesn't have to be perfect. So, um, that is where we'll leave it there, guys. Again, thank you so much for listening to our Freedom from Alcohol podcast. We'd love to have you in our Facebook group. It's same name, Freedom from Alcohol. If you go to facebook.com/freedom from alcohol or just search for it, you'll find us in there. It's a wonderful community. And if you're interested in working with us to help you change your relationship with alcohol and really thrive, work on your mindset, understand why you're drinking, understand who you are without alcohol, and lose the desire for it. So it's not that you are forcing yourself not to have it, but you genuinely don't want it. It's unappealing because that makes a difference. That's what we help people do. You can go to coachbychris.com and schedule a consultation call there as well. All right. That'll wrap it up for us, guys. Great episode. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time on Freedom from Alcohol.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.